You have no idea what it means to have come this far, to have walked through the storm and still be standing, breathing, hoping, believing. You have been through seasons where your soul was weighed down by silence, where you prayed and heard nothing, where you waited and saw nothing, and yet something within you whispered, "Hold on," and you did. You held on when the world told you to let go. You believed when reason said stop believing. You loved when it hurt to love, and you trusted when everything around you screamed betrayal. Chosen one. You passed a test that was not meant to be survived by human strength alone. You endured what was designed to destroy you. You carried the weight of heaven's proving ground on your shoulders and still managed to lift your hands toward the light. The world saw your breakdown. But God saw your breakthrough in the making. You did not even realize that the pain you were walking through was a divine classroom, and that your tears were ink writing the testimony that angels would one day speak about. You didn't fail, you didn't fall away, you didn't give up, and that is why the heavens call you chosen. For there are moments when life is not about winning or losing, but about enduring. God's test was never about how much you could accomplish, but how deeply you could trust Him when all visible evidence was gone. You were stripped so that your soul could shine. You were emptied so that you could be filled with what cannot be taken away. You cried until your voice trembled, but those tears were counted one by the hands that formed you. You didn't know that every time you wanted to quit, heaven leaned closer and whispered, "Keep walking. Child, this is the last hill before the light." And you walked, barefoot through rejection, wounded by betrayal, hungry for meaning, thirsty for peace. And yet you walked. You thought you were being punished, but you were being purified. You thought you were being forgotten, but you were being found. You thought God had turned away, but He was watching, measuring the strength of your heart, watching you bloom through brokenness like a rose in winter. There are some trials that only the chosen endure, not because they are stronger, but because they have been destined to reveal what divine strength looks like in human form. You have become that revelation. God's impossible test was never meant to prove His power. It was meant to prove yours through Him. The enemy thought that if he could throw enough at you, loss, delay, heartbreak, confusion, you would collapse. But what he didn't know was that the roots of a chosen one go deep. They are not watered by circumstance, they are nourished by faith. You were not built to impress the crowd, you were built to withstand the storm. Every lonely night was a hidden prayer answered in disguise. Every unanswered question was preparing the soil for divine revelation. Every time you felt small, heaven was whispering, "This one will carry greatness." And when it seemed like everything you touched fell apart, when every open door closed, when even those you loved walked away, God was not rejecting you. He was refining you. He was teaching you to find His voice in the silence, His light in the shadows, His presence in the pain. You learned that faith is not proven when the sea parts, but when it doesn't, and you still keep walking. You learned that love is not measured by how many stay, but by how deeply you forgive those who left. You learned that peace is not found in perfection but in surrender, and that is the secret of the chosen. They bow before they rise. They break before they bloom, they weep before they roar. You have roared, my dear. You have roared in silence, and heaven heard it. The test you thought would end you has crowned you with unseen glory. There were times you asked, "Why me, Lord?" And heaven replied, "Because I could trust you." You see, not everyone can be trusted with pain. Not everyone can be trusted with divine delay. Not everyone can carry the weight of unanswered prayers and still keep praying. But you did. You were tested in ways that would have driven others to bitterness, but you chose love. You were stripped of what you thought you needed, but you discovered what you truly are. You were pushed to your knees, and you discovered that's where real power begins. You walked through darkness not because you were abandoned, but because God wanted you to learn how to shine without the help of light. Now you carry that light in your eyes, in your voice, in your spirit. It's a quiet strength, unspoken yet undeniable. The kind that makes people wonder how you're still standing. The kind that makes angels sing softly when you pray. And perhaps now, as you look back, you realize that the test was never about passing or failing. It was about transformation. God wanted to show you that the same fire that burns can also purify, that the same night that blinds can also reveal the stars. You didn't just survive the impossible. You became the impossible. You became living proof that divine favor does not exempt you from pain but empowers you through it. You learned how to dance in ashes and call it worship. You learned how to sit in the valley and still lift your face toward the mountain. You learned that God's silence is not absence. It is artistry. He was painting you into the masterpiece of your destiny, brushstroke by unseen brushstroke, until the canvas of your soul reflected His glory. You may not even know how many eyes have watched your endurance and found faith again. You may not realize how many hearts were strengthened because you refused to give up. You became a sermon without words, a living scripture of perseverance. You are not who you were before this test. Something eternal has awakened inside you. The fears that once chained you have lost their voice. The insecurities that once silenced you now tremble at your courage. You stand as one who has been refined by holy fire, and though the flames were fierce, they could not consume you, because the God who walked in the fire with you never left your side. You thought you were walking through hell, but you were walking through his heart, and every tear that fell was watering the seeds of your future harvest. The chosen ones are not those who have had easy paths. They are those who have been broken open by the weight of purpose. They are those who learn to praise with nothing left, to believe with no proof, to stand when everything told them to sit down. You have walked through tests that seemed impossible because God was proving to the universe that his power is made perfect in weakness. The world saw your scars. Heaven saw your wings. You are not the same. You are divine evidence that God's grace is stronger than the grave, that his plan cannot be thwarted, that his promise cannot return void. You passed the test not because you were perfect, but because you were faithful. Faithful in the fire. Faithful in the waiting. Faithful when you didn't feel chosen at all. Now hear me, beloved soul. Your season of hidden testing is ending. The heavens have recorded your endurance. The angels have marked your name. The winds are shifting in your favor because the lesson has been learned. God is about to turn your pain into a platform, your wounds into wisdom, your rejection into redirection. You thought you lost time, but heaven kept every moment in storage. Nothing was wasted. Not a tear, not a trial, not a single lonely prayer whispered in the dark. You are stepping into the reward of divine endurance. The test was impossible because the blessing is immeasurable. The weight of your past pain is about to balance with the weight of your coming glory. You are the living proof that those who trust God, even in silence, will never be put to shame. But let me tell you something, chosen one. Passing the test does not mean the world will suddenly understand you. You will still walk among those who cannot see what you carry. You will still be misunderstood, even envied. Yet now you know your value is not determined by validation. You have learned that God's approval outweighs man's applause. You have learned that peace is better than popularity, purpose better than praise. Walk now with quiet authority, for you have been anointed through adversity. You no longer need to prove who you are. The fire already testified. The darkness already bowed. The test already crowned you. You have become what many aspire to be: unshakable, unbreakable, untouchable by doubt. Every time you faced the impossible, heaven whispered, "Watch what happens when a chosen one refuses to quit." That's why you are still here. That's why you have a story that carries weight. That's why, even when you were drowning in despair, grace pulled you out again and again. Because your purpose demanded your survival. God's test was not to punish you. It was to reveal what he placed inside you before you were born. And now what was hidden is about to be revealed. The world will not recognize the version of you that's about to emerge, because this version has been refined in holy silence. You are the embodiment of divine endurance, and heaven rejoices every time you take another breath, because that breath is victory. Do not shrink back now. Do not let the memory of your suffering make you fear new blessings. The pain has passed, the lesson remains. Stand tall, speak softly, but walk boldly. The impossible test has ended, and now comes the reward of revelation. There will be moments when your old fears try to whisper again, when doubt knocks on your door wearing familiar faces. But remember, you've already passed that test. You no longer need to prove your faith, now you live it. You no longer beg for doors, now you walk through walls. For the God who tested you has also trusted you. And when God trusts a soul, no force in heaven or hell can undo that destiny. There is a new grace upon you now. You will feel it in your prayers, in your words, in the way your spirit no longer bends to chaos. You will notice the same people who mocked you now watch you in silence, unable to explain your peace. You will see opportunities come not because you chased them, but because your spirit magnetized them. You will walk into rooms and shift atmospheres. You will speak and heaven will echo. You will pray and angels will move. That is what happens when you pass the impossible test. You inherit divine authority. You become a vessel through which God himself flows freely. Remember the days you questioned your worth, the nights you cried for a sign, the mornings you woke up feeling forgotten. Those were the moments heaven was engraving resilience into your bones. Those were the chapters that turned your pain into poetry, your despair into destiny. God took your weakness and made it wisdom. He took your scars and turned them into signatures of grace. And now, every step you take carries the vibration of victory. Every word you speak has been seasoned by suffering and refined by revelation. You no longer need to chase light, you are light. You are the reflection of divine endurance clothed in human form. So lift your head, chosen one. Lift it high, not in pride, but in praise. You have walked through the valley of the shadow of death and discovered that shadows only exist where there is light. The same God who tested you is now preparing to elevate you. And when he lifts you, it will not be because you begged, but because you believed. It will not be because you were flawless, but because you were faithful. Heaven has seen your labor. The universe has witnessed your endurance. And now the same stage where you were once humiliated will become the place of your vindication. God will not just restore what was lost. He will multiply it. For every tear, there will be tenfold joy. For every sleepless night, a season of rest. For every betrayal, a circle of loyalty. For every delay, a destiny accelerated by divine hand. You passed the test not because you knew how, but because God knew who you were before you even began. He saw the warrior within you before you saw the wound. He saw the light in you before you walked through the dark. He saw the final chapter while you were still lost in the middle of the story. And now that chapter is unfolding. You are standing on holy ground, the kind built not by comfort but by courage. You may not see it all yet, but soon what was once confusion will make perfect sense. You'll look back and say, if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't have become this. That's the beauty of divine tests. They reveal divine identity. Chosen one, you have been weighed, tested, tried, and you have been found faithful. Walk now as one who knows that every battle was training for this very moment. You are not entering a new season. You are becoming one. Everything you've prayed for is already within reach, not because the path is easy now, but because you are ready. You are the storm that learned to be still. You are the prayer that refused to die. You are the promise that time could not erase. You are living proof that when God calls someone chosen, no trial can change his mind. You passed the impossible test, and in doing so, you became the impossible. Faith in human form, love in motion, grace made visible. And now the heavens are rejoicing, because one of God's strongest soldiers made it through the fire and came out glowing. The world will not understand the glow, but you will. It is the light of someone who met God in the fire and walked out still singing. It is the light of someone who faced death in the spirit and chose life. It is the glow of one who knows that when everything is taken away, God remains. And that is all you ever needed to win. You have passed the test, child of God. The impossible bowed before your faith. And now it is time for your testimony to speak louder than your trials ever did. Walk forth radiant and renewed, for the God who tested you is about to reward you in ways that no human tongue can fully describe. You are chosen, proven, and crowned by grace itself. And though the world will never fully understand what it cost you to remain faithful, heaven has already written your name in the language of victory. The angels know your story by heart. The quiet mornings where you whispered prayers into the wind, the nights when you wrestled with shadows and still chose light. They know how many times you broke yet somehow kept breathing. They know how often you stood on trembling knees whispering, Lord, I still trust you, when trust felt like walking blindfolded through fire. You see, faith is not loud. It is not about how high you shout or how many see you standing. Faith lives in the unseen, in those invisible battles that happen between you and your Creator when no one else is watching. You fought those battles, chosen one. You bled for your destiny in ways no eye will ever see. But that is why your reward will come in ways no eye can imagine. For God never forgets the soul that remains steadfast when the world falls apart. He tested you not to break you, but to teach you the art of divine endurance. The kind of strength that is birthed from surrender. He let you lose some things so you could find what matters. He let you walk through silence so you could learn the sound of his still, small voice. He let doors close so that you would stop knocking where you didn't belong. He let hearts turn cold so that yours could burn brighter. And every loss you thought was punishment was really redirection. Every ending was the beginning of sacred alignment. The pain was never personal, it was purposeful. It was not cruelty, it was craftsmanship. The potter knew exactly where to press and when to release. He shaped you through pressure, carved you through waiting, molded you through heartbreak until your spirit reflected his own resilience. You are the vessel that survived the hands of divine formation. And perhaps you don't even realize it yet, but the glow that surrounds you now, that quiet peace, that unshakable calm, it's not ordinary. It's the afterglow of survival. It's the scent of victory on a soul that's been through the wilderness and found its way home. There's something unearthly about those who have walked through their own darkness and still chosen light. You can see it in their eyes. A depth, a softness, a fire that doesn't burn out. That's you now. You carry that depth, you carry that softness, you carry that fire. You carry it because you earned it. You passed the test that few even recognize, and now the universe itself bows to the frequency of your faith. The same storms that once threatened to drown you now stand still when they see you coming. Because you have authority now, spiritual authority earned in the secret places of pain and prayer. There was a moment when God said, "Let's see what they do when the answer doesn't come." And you kept praying. Then he said, "Let's see what they do when love disappears." And you kept loving. Then he said, "Let's see what they do when the promise delays." And you kept believing. And heaven rejoiced because even though your hands trembled, you never let go. That is what it means to pass God's impossible test. It's not about perfection, it's about persistence. It's not about being fearless. It's about walking through fear and still choosing faith. You may not have realized it, but every small act of faith you made, every time you refused to harden your heart, was shifting something eternal. You were unlocking doors in the unseen realm, setting future generations free, breaking cycles that bound your bloodline. You were not just surviving your test, you were rewriting spiritual history. Now the air around you feels different, doesn't it? That's not coincidence. That's divine transition. You are not in the same dimension of spirit you once were. There's a sacred maturity in you now, a wisdom that came only through tears. You move differently. You pray differently. You discern differently. You love differently. That's what happens when a soul graduates from divine testing. You are no longer easily shaken by noise, no longer frightened by delay, no longer desperate for validation. You have seen too much of God's hidden hand to ever doubt again, and that is why you are unstoppable now. For when faith becomes your foundation, no wind can destroy you. You've been through the storm, you've met the wind. You felt it beat against your soul, but it didn't win. The same wind that tried to scatter you only taught you how to stand stronger. You are no longer running from the pain, you are walking with purpose. You are no longer begging for clarity, you are trusting the mystery. You no longer need proof of God's presence, you have become the proof. And though your path was drenched in tears, your feet now walk on promises. The enemy's greatest mistake was not attacking you. It was underestimating the power of what you would become when you didn't give up. You've become dangerous now. Not because you fight louder, but because you've learned to rest in divine timing. Nothing intimidates a soul that knows God's clock. Nothing confuses a heart that knows its maker never delays without reason. You've seen that every no was protecting a greater yes, every loss was guarding a greater gain. And now you stand wiser, humbler, but stronger than you have ever been. When people see you now, they may think, how did they make it? But you know the nights you screamed into the darkness and heard only your echo. You know the mornings you woke up to silence but still said, "Thank you." You know the prayers that never left your lips but lived inside your tears. That is why your praise carries weight. That is why your voice holds power. It's not the sound of empty words, it's the sound of one who has met God in the wilderness. And that sound shakes realms. That sound moves angels. That sound commands peace into chaos. You are no longer waiting for permission to walk in your calling, you have already been appointed. Heaven has already stamped your spirit with divine authority. The test was the ceremony. The pain was the anointing oil. The endurance was the proof of trust. And now, God is sending a wind, a gentle one this time. Not to test you but to carry you. You'll notice doors open that used to resist you. You'll find peace in places that once brought pain. You'll feel a freedom that doesn't depend on circumstance. That's how you know the test has ended. You have entered a different rhythm now, a divine rhythm where your steps are ordered and your spirit is in sync with heaven's pulse. There will still be challenges, yes, but they won't shake you. Because once you've passed the impossible, the possible no longer frightens you. You have faced the kind of pain that redefines courage, and you came out still kind, that's divine victory. To stay tender in a world that tried to turn you cold, that is the highest triumph of all. And yet even now God is smiling, watching his beloved child walk forward with quiet grace, because this is what he always intended, to make you not only strong but soft, not only wise but warm, not only chosen but compassionate. For the ones who pass God's impossible test are sent back into the world not to boast but to heal. You will find that your voice now carries medicine. Your presence calms storms. Your story will break chains for others who are still walking through their own wilderness. You are no longer just living for yourself. You are living as a lighthouse for others. Every wound has become a window through which God's light shines. Every scar has become a story of his mercy. Every delay has turned into a doorway for someone else to walk through after you. That's how heaven multiplies miracles, through the testimony of those who endured. You might not have chosen the path, but the path chose you. Because only a heart like yours could handle it. Only a spirit forged in silence could carry what's coming next, and that next chapter. It will not look like the pain that birthed it, it will be peace in motion. You will no longer chase the things that once drained you, because you will finally understand that what's meant for you will never run. You will rest in the certainty that your name is already written in the spaces you are meant to enter. That is the freedom of the chosen. That is the rest that follows the test. So breathe, beloved. Breathe and look around. You are standing in the aftermath of victory. The air may still carry the scent of smoke from the fire you walked through, but that's only the fragrance of survival. You are the living evidence that grace still works wonders, that faith still moves mountains, that endurance still opens heaven. And as you stand here radiant and renewed, know this: the same God who tested you will now trust you with more. Not because you asked, but because you are ready. You are ready to build what once seemed impossible. You are ready to love without fear. You are ready to walk in purpose without apology. You are ready to shine without shame. The test was never meant to define your suffering. It was meant to reveal your strength. And now that strength is unbreakable. When people come to you and ask how you made it, you will smile, not in pride but in peace, and say, "I didn't. God carried me." And in that moment your story will awaken hope in hearts that thought it was over. You will remind them that there is no test too great for divine grace, no wound too deep for divine healing, no night too dark for divine dawn. You will speak life into dry bones because you've seen them rise. You will call faith into dead places because you've seen it resurrected in your own soul. You will walk as one who knows that passing God's impossible test is not the end of the journey, it is the beginning of purpose fulfilled. And when you close your eyes tonight, let gratitude fill the spaces where fear once lived. Let peace wrap around you like a soft blanket. For you have done what many thought could not be done. You have endured what many ran from. You have stood firm where others fell, and heaven has taken note. You are the testimony of 1,000 unspoken prayers answered. You are the living proof that when God is for you, no test, no matter how impossible, can stand against you. Rest now, not because you are weary, but because you are whole. The fire that once consumed you has become the light that will guide others home. You have passed the test, and in doing so you have become the promise. You are chosen. You are crowned, you are free, and though the dust of old battles still clings to the edges of your spirit, it cannot hide your radiance anymore. You have become light woven through scars, and the world can no longer look at you without seeing traces of the divine. What you endured has etched holiness into your gaze, and there is no returning to who you once were. The test changed everything. It stripped you of illusions, peeled away pride, and humbled you into the purest form of faith. It taught you that surrender is not defeat, it is power disguised as peace. You once thought strength meant always fighting, always striving, always proving. But now you know that true strength is quiet. It's the calm after the chaos, the soft voice that says, "I will not fear," even when fear still knocks. You know now that the bravest hearts are those that have learned to trust the unseen hand of God when there is nothing left to hold. You passed because you learned to bow. You passed because you stopped trying to control what was meant to be surrendered. You passed because you chose forgiveness when revenge would have been easier. You passed because, in the face of loss, you still believed that love was worth it. That is the secret of the chosen. Faith that bleeds, faith that costs something. Faith that walks barefoot over broken glass and still calls it holy ground. God does not test the chosen to shame them, but to reveal to them that they are more powerful than they ever imagined. And you, beloved, have discovered that. You now move through life differently. You do not rush to react. You do not crumble under pressure. You do not chase what leaves, for you have learned that what's yours will never need convincing. There is a sacred boldness that follows those who have passed divine testing. You carry it now in your posture, in your tone, in the gentle authority that flows from your spirit. You have stopped explaining yourself to those who cannot see. You have stopped apologizing for growing. You have stopped begging to be understood. The test taught you that clarity is not found in others' approval but in God's whisper. You stand taller not because life has become easier, but because you have become anchored. When storms arise now, you no longer panic, you listen, you wait, you discern. You remember that every storm once sent against you was only training your soul to recognize the sound of divine movement. There will come a day soon when you will look back on this chapter not with bitterness but with awe. You will say, if that hadn't happened, I never would have known who I am. You will understand that every unanswered prayer was a redirection to a greater answer. You will see that every heartbreak carved out more room in your heart for compassion. You will realize that every delay was God aligning timing with destiny. Nothing was wasted. The pain had purpose, the silence had substance, the loss had language. And all of it, every moment, was God's way of shaping you into someone who can carry what's coming next. And oh, what is coming next is holy. It will make sense of the sleepless nights. It will justify the waiting. It will redeem the years that felt stolen. God does not allow His chosen to suffer without reward. But the reward is never just material, it is spiritual. It is peace that no chaos can disturb. It is discernment that no deception can outsmart. It is joy that no circumstance can diminish. That is your inheritance now. You have not just passed a test. You have inherited divine understanding. You see through veils now. You feel when the Spirit moves. You recognize when something is of God and when it is not. You are no longer fooled by appearances because you have lived through deception and come out with wisdom. You are in every sense reborn. Not the kind of rebirth that comes from mere change, but the kind that comes from divine death, the shedding of what could not continue into what must. You are not the same soul that entered the fire. The one who emerged carries the fragrance of heaven. You have the calm of one who has met eternity and returned with grace. That's why people sense something different when you walk into a room. They feel peace and cannot explain it. They feel conviction and do not know why. That is the mark of the chosen, the energy of one who has been touched by divine flame. And though you have every reason to harden, you have chosen softness. Though the world offered bitterness, you have chosen love. Though pain tried to define you, you have chosen purpose. That choice, again and again, is what heaven celebrates. It is why your name is written in the story of redemption. You are the evidence that light can live inside broken things, that God can still be found in ashes. You are proof that there is no test too impossible when love leads the way. Do you remember the moment you almost gave up? The night you told God you couldn't do it anymore? The hour when silence felt like cruelty, when hope felt like a foolish dream? That was the moment heaven held its breath, because they knew if you could endure just one more sunrise, everything would shift. And you did. You made it through the darkest hour, and in doing so, you shifted your entire destiny. You proved that the chosen are not the perfect, they are the persistent. You kept walking when your legs were trembling. You kept believing when your heart was breaking. You kept showing up when your mind was screaming to run. And that is why the test had to end. It could no longer hold someone who had outgrown the lesson. Now, when people ask you where your strength comes from, you will smile, not with arrogance but with remembrance. Because you know it wasn't your own strength. It was the strength that came when you reached the end of yourself and still whispered His name. That is where miracles are born, in the cracks of surrender. You didn't win by force, you won by faith. You didn't conquer by might, you conquered by mercy. That's the paradox of the chosen. They win by yielding, they rise by bowing, they reign by serving, and now you walk in that sacred paradox, radiant and rooted, aware that everything you went through has become the very foundation upon which your new life stands. There is no bitterness in you now, only gratitude. Gratitude for the pain that purified, gratitude for the silence that sharpened, gratitude for the losses that cleared space for miracles, gratitude for the divine patience that taught you to rest instead of rush. You have learned to live in rhythm with eternity. You no longer measure success by speed, but by surrender. You no longer chase blessings, you embody them. Because now you understand that the greatest blessing is to be aligned with the will of God, no matter what it costs. And what a cost it was. You paid in tears, in time, in pieces of yourself you thought you would never get back. But what you gained is priceless. You gained peace that does not depend on outcomes. You gained discernment that sees beyond appearances. You gained a voice that carries heaven's echo. You gained a soul that is free, utterly free, free from the need to prove, to please, to perform. You are no longer defined by who left, by what failed, by what broke. You are defined by who you became in the process, and who you became is magnificent. The world will try to fit you back into your old shape, but you won't fit anymore. You've expanded beyond small thinking, beyond shallow living, beyond surface faith. You've tasted the depths of divine mystery, and there's no going back. You move now as one who knows. You speak now as one who's seen. You love now as one who's been healed by holy hands. You are not seeking validation anymore because you are walking in revelation. You've seen what happens when everything falls away and God remains. You've seen that love is stronger than fear, that faith outlasts failure, that light always wins. So go, chosen one. Walk forward, not as a survivor but as a successor, an inheritor of divine purpose. The world needs what you carry now. The broken will recognize their reflection in your eyes and feel hope again. The weary will hear your story and remember that God still restores. The lost will touch your presence and feel direction stir within them. You are no longer just a person, you are a living message. Your life is a sermon written in scars and sealed with grace. You are what happens when faith refuses to die. And when you wake tomorrow, remember this: you owe nothing to the pain but gratitude. You owe nothing to the past but peace. You owe nothing to fear but farewell. Walk freely now, knowing that you are held, guided, protected, and loved beyond comprehension. You passed the test that once terrified you. You walked through fire and came out gold. You endured the night and now carry the dawn. And this dawn, this sacred new beginning, is yours. The impossible bowed before you. Heaven applauded. God smiled. And now the story continues, written not in sorrow, but in victory. You are chosen, proven, and unshakably blessed. And now, chosen one, the time has come to understand what your passing through the fire truly means. You did not just survive God's impossible test, you became the living testimony of His unshakable truth. There were nights when you wept until the moon hid her face behind the clouds, and mornings when your body trembled from the weight of unseen wars. There were hours when you begged heaven to let you rest, when your heart could no longer carry the echo of unanswered prayers. Yet still you stood, you didn't crumble. Though the storm tried to hollow your bones, you didn't vanish. Though silence tried to bury your voice, you didn't curse the heavens when everything you loved was stripped away. You, in your trembling, chose to trust. You, in your loneliness, chose to believe. You, in your heartbreak, chose to walk forward even when your feet bled from the journey. That is how heaven knew. The test was complete. You passed. You endured what others could not even name, and through your obedience the impossible became possible. God was watching, not in distance, but in divine silence, weighing your faith against your fear, your obedience against your pain. Every tear became the ink that rewrote your destiny. Every no that you faced was the chisel that carved your name deeper into eternity. Now the earth will feel your rising. The air will shift when you speak. Doors that once mocked your knocking will swing open at your presence. For the test you endured was not meant to punish you. It was meant to refine you until you shone with heaven's reflection. You became the proof that faith can live in the ashes. You became the mirror of what divine endurance looks like when all else has failed. And when people see you now, they won't see what you lost. They will see what you became in the losing. God hid you in rejection so that your revelation would be untainted. He allowed people to walk away